less than 2 weeks, Formula One returns. And whilst we won't be racing on the streets of Melbourne just yet, first up we have testing. Now, I remember when I was first getting into Formula One, I didn't quite understand what winter testing meant. What actually is winter testing? Well, don't worry. If you're in that boat, hopefully I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown what teams actually do, but also for you guys out there that know what winter testing is, I'm also going to give you all the details of testing in 2020. If you're new around here and cannot wait, just cannot wait for the new season to start, feel free to hit that subscribe button. I'll hopefully keep those Formula One taste buds tingling up until the first Grand Prix of the season. Enough waiting, let's get in with winter testing. Formula One pre-season begins with one of my favourite parts of the entire year, and it doesn't actually involve a single car moving a single centimetre. And that's because I'm talking about the car launches, our first chance to see the 2020 beasts in the flesh, and it's our first chance to see the liveries, the brand new lick of paint for 2020. If you don't know, cars change their design every single season, and it's our first chance to see the designs of the 2020 grid. It's also our chance to see most drivers in their new team overalls, and a bit of Formula One I absolutely love is helmet design. A little bit more niche for most motorsport fans, but just design in general I think is fantastic. And whilst most of the cars used in the launch days and the actual car launches aren't actually the 2020 cars, mainly down to the fact they don't want to give any little secrets away to their competitors. So the cars we actually see at these launch events are more of a hybrid monster of a Formula One car. We might have a 2020 front wing, but we might have a 2019 chassis and rear wing. It's all a bit of a mix, but in Formula One, every little advantage is a big advantage. So just holding back their design for an extra week in Formula One, that can make a big difference. The teams themselves don't actually launch on the same day and at the same location. As you can see on the left hand side of your screen now, they're all on, for the most part, completely different days. Starting on the 11th of February, we've got Ferrari, the first of the big three top teams in Formula One. The day after, on the 12th, we've got both Renault and Red Bull. McLaren follow them on the 13th. AlphaTauri, a brand new team, kind of, to the 2020 grid. You can catch one of my latest videos the other day where we spoke about AlphaTauri. But what's so fascinating about this team is we have no idea what their car is going to look like for this upcoming season. For the most part, cars stay relatively similar. Newsflash, a Ferrari is probably going to be red, a Red Bull is probably going to continue with a very similar Red Bull design, and a Mercedes is probably going to be silver. But AlphaTauri, we've got no clue. We have absolutely no idea. The best we can go from is the brand's design itself is mainly featured predominantly with black and white colouring. So hopefully we could get a really smart black and white design. And on the very same day as AlphaTauri, it's the reigning champions Mercedes. We've got a bit of a few days gap after that to the 17th of February, where Racing Point are actually doing their car launch in Austria. Maybe a new sponsorship deal could be in the works there, and the famous pink team could potentially be changing things up for 2020. I'm not too sure, but there's room for improvement. On the same day, we have Williams. That car can't get much worse than it was last year in terms of design, so I'm looking forward to their launch. And on the 19th of February, the first day of testing itself, both Alfa Romeo and Haas will be launching their 2020 cars. Haas themselves could be reverting to their old design after their partnership with Rich Energy, I think it's best to say, didn't end very well. So I would very much doubt that we're going to have a black and gold livery from that team. And it potentially looks like they might even try to go for a black and red design. A lot to look forward to in the world of liveries. But yes, as I just mentioned, the 19th of February is day number 1 for winter testing. We head over to Spain, the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, the home of the Spanish Grand Prix. but we do 2 weeks of testing. Now, testing itself, very straightforward. A morning session, an afternoon session, and the general basis of testing is time trials. There's no real competition. You don't earn points, you don't lose points, you don't get penalties. It's very straightforward. All you do, you show up to testing and you test the car to see if it's working. I know it sounds silly, but this is the chance. The team's only chance before the season starts to get the car on a track, because they're not allowed to do it privately anymore in the world of Formula One. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, teams were able just to do private testing wherever they liked. Ferrari even made their own circuit to test their cars. They can't do that anymore. That's not allowed. So, these 2 weeks, that aren't actually 2 weeks, I'll talk about that in a moment, but this testing period is the only chance before the season to iron out those little issues. They might have a car that is fantastic in a straight line, but for some reason can't quite go through the corners. This is their chance to really analyse what's going wrong and just do slight fixes before the first race of the season. Now, I've really made that sound really basic, and of course the world of Formula One is a lot more complex than that, but in layman's terms, that's all that testing is, just to make sure any issues are ironed out. So realistically, if a car is breaking down every single day in winter testing, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It allows the team to really understand what's going wrong with the car and just gives them that opportunity to learn, is probably the best way of describing winter testing. Of course, we can't really judge what car's going to be quickest. Last year we came out of testing thinking Ferrari were going to be world champions by a country mile, and I don't think that materialised quite like the media were expecting. We have teams like Mercedes that always love a fatty sandbag, which again generally means they don't like to prove their real pace of their car. So whilst we can say, oh wow, this Ferrari's gone 1 second quicker than the rest of those other cars, the teams aren't really giving it full beans, trying to drive the best laps they can, because it's testing and there's no real competition at this stage of the season. So what you're really looking out for over the course of winter testing is lap times. That will be something that's factored in. That partnered with fuel loads of the car, which generally we won't get a true picture of how heavy the fuel loads the cars will be using, but also tyres. Depending on what the compound of the tyre the car is using, whether that's the hard, the medium or the soft, will depend on lap time. So there's lots of variables, but I often find the best variable to use is laps completed. Again, this can be a very arbitrary statistic. A team that's slowest on the grid could show up and put in over 1,000 laps and be fantastic in terms of laps, but still be 2 seconds behind on-track pace. And that's not good. But as a general rule, the best teams going into the season have learnt the most from winter testing, and that's generally through most laps completed, and they can understand where the car's going well and where it's not. It's very hard to judge winter testing. That's kind of the point at this stage of the season. Testing itself is shorter this season. Last year it was 8 days over 2 weeks. Now it's taken down to just 6. There's your mini calendar on the left hand side of the screen, and you'll notice it starts on Wednesday the 19th of February, goes on to the 20th and 21st, and then we've got quite a sizable gap this season. 4 days off the teams get, lucky boys and girls this season, and then on the 26th of February, testing will commence once again for a second time round, 3 more days until the 28th of February, which doesn't leave them a lot of time until the first race of the season in Melbourne, which is only on March the 15th, which is not a lot of time to get those issues rectified. So fingers crossed the teams have done their homework before going into testing, know their plan. Hopefully the car doesn't break down. It's not mandatory to show up for testing, but it's highly advised. Last year, Williams didn't show up for the first few days, and looking at their results over 2019, that probably didn't help them. So of course, testing, Sounds very straightforward. You show up, you put in some laps, happy days. It's a little bit more complex, but it's our first real chance to see the 2020 cars. Formula One fans, when the winter's on, we just need that little bit of on-track action just to keep us ticking over the winter. But it's not long to go, just over a month until we're racing once again in Melbourne. And only 1 week after that, on the 22nd of March, we head to Bahrain for the second race of the season. It's super close now. We've almost made it. Car launches next week, testing the week after. Formula One's back, ladies and gents. If you have enjoyed today's whistle-stop tour of winter testing, or if you've got any more questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. I try my very best to answer as many of those as possible. If you're new around here, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you're just quenching a bit of Formula One at the moment, you can feel free to subscribe. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.